Good evening, everybody. It's your one stop shop for everything about the National Football League. This is Lloyd Vance's Insider Football for another week on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. Glad to be with you this week, and we're going to catch up a lot on what happened in week 7, man. It was a crazy week around the National Football League, and we're going to have Ryan Neff, our old buddy, come back, and we're going to talk about all the news and notes and what went on. First and foremost, it was a crazy week because the majority, not the majority, but there were 6 teams that were in bye. So I'll call it bye-a-palooza. It was a situation where you had Houston, Carolina, the Jets, Dallas, Cincinnati, Tennessee on a bye. And then you had only 13 games around the league, but there were a lot of games to talk about. And Ryan, one of the biggest things was some people were saying possible Super Bowl previews. We'll see. I'll just call them quality AFC, NFC matchups, where you had Baltimore playing Detroit, the Eagles playing Miami, and then you kind of figure out, okay, who's a contender, who's a pretender. A big thing is a lot of teams were saying we're collapsing for Caleb, and no, you had some of these bad teams that were underdogs. The New York Giants, they beat the Washington Commanders. The Denver Broncos, they beat the Green Bay Packers. And then the biggest one of all, we all said he was done, that he was cooked, that he should go away. Robert Kraft should fire him. The New England Patriots surprisingly beat the Buffalo Bills, who you have to start to wonder, are they ready for prime time? And that was a total shocker as the Patriots beat them. But a good divisional matchup there. I'll bring Ryan in here because I want to talk to him. He's our college football guy here at Broad Street South Network. And a big thing is this whole collapsing for Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams, we saw him lose to Notre Dame. The game was kind of close, but he lost badly to Utah. And a lot of people are saying, is he still the number 1 overall pick? And then he's talking about maybe he'll stay in school. He's trying to dictate a lot of things. What do you think in terms of Caleb Williams? Is he still that guy, or is Dake down in North Carolina gaining on him in terms of the number 1 overall pick in 2024?
Well, I mean, I would have to caution everybody on the whole quarterback thing, just from the standpoint of we saw what happened 2 years ago with all the quarterbacks drafted, and none of them really aren't panning out the way everybody thought that they would. So just because Caleb Williams looks fantastic in college, just because Drake May looks fantastic in college, it might not equate to the NFL. So I would say that Drake May is more in an NFL-ready system than maybe Caleb Williams is. I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out. So, you lose 2 in a row, and I think it's like the 3rd or 4th win in a row for Utah over USC. So, it's Utah, good defense. They threw up points. Don't get me wrong. But again, when it comes to the quarterback position, and this, LV, it's the new brand of NFL. What do most NFL teams run now? It's the RPO. So it is Caleb Williams that kind of RPO kind of guy? I don't know. Is Drake May an RPO kind of guy? I don't know. Drake May is more of a sit in the pocket kind of passer. Now, he's deceptively quick. Caleb Williams is the same way. How it translates to the NFL, I don't know. Because, again, Zach Wilson not panning out. Justin Fields not panning out. You look at some of the Trey Lance thing went south. So, just because these guys are like Heisman hopefuls and they're going to go high in the draft, that doesn't mean squat when it comes to today's NFL.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. And around draft time, we'll bring some of my draft guru types, the guys that live and breathe this, some of the scouting guys that I talk to, and they can come on and break them all down. But as you said, the games are just so different in terms of the college football and the NFL. In college, look, it's athlete the competition. You have better recruits, you have better speed guys on the outside. You're typically going to win, and usually those 5-star guys, they bring in a whole bucket load of them, and then they kind of just sort it out and see who goes from there. Now with the transfer portal, you get these guys moving around, but you look at these super teams like Georgia's always putting together, Alabama's always putting together. But typically, when I see the quarterbacks from those types of schools, some of their skills don't equate to the National Football League. So, good point that there. It's two different games, and we're going to have to see how they turn out. A crazy thing I heard was somebody was saying, should Williams sit out the rest of his college season now that he can't win a national championship and get ready? I mean, we've already seen some of these guys not playing their bowl games, and we did see Micah Parsons the year he was a senior. He did sit out the year last year, Penn State, but I think that was more for COVID reasons and not that he just wanted to preserve himself. So, we'll wrap a bow on it. But what do you think about the chances that these guys sit out the rest of the season and get ready for the NFL draft?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, you've seen it the last 4 or 5 years where if you're not playing, and now next year will be 12, but if they're not playing in the Final Four, a lot of guys who are going to go in the draft, a lot of them skip the bowl game. They skip the final, whatever, especially the bowl game. If they're not in that Final Four, even though they might be going to an elite bowl game, they skip it anyway because they don't want to get hurt, because their draft stock might fall. So, yeah, I mean, this is just the new dawn of college football and where it stands. And again, if Caleb Williams later in the year, if he's not playing for a Pac-12 title and they're going to a so-so bowl game, or if it's a decent bowl game, he's probably going to sit out. And I would point to my Florida Gators 3-4 years ago. They were on a roll. They lost the last couple of games. They were still in the SEC championship game. And a multitude of Florida Gators skipped the SEC championship game. They skipped the bowl game, and Kyle Trask was left on an island. So, yeah, I mean, if you don't see teams in the Final Four that you thought were going to be in the Final Four, you're going to see a mass exodus of players skipping bowl games. That's just
and I think, Ryan, this is a new world we live in terms of college football, in terms of NIL money, in terms of the transfer portal. That's just the way it's going to be. It's not going to go back to the old days where you had, the Orange Bowl every year was the Big 8 champion versus I forget who. And the Rose Bowl every year was Pac-10, Big 10. Now it's these super conferences, and it's just a totally different game. So we'll see how this turns out. But it was good to see some of those teams that we thought didn't have much fight left continue moving on. And one of the games I do want to highlight, though, we talk about college football, and this was a battle of two former teammates. You had a couple of years ago, and Chris Collinsworth showed all the clips on Sunday Night Football. It was Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins, and he was playing Jalen Hurts and Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. It was a reunion of two former Alabama quarterbacks. Yeah, they seem more like acquaintances now than best friends. And they did have a rivalry going there, and we saw Hurts kind of lose that battle. He went to Oklahoma, but he was able to succeed at Oklahoma, and then the Eagles take him in the second round. And, they're both very successful. They play the game differently. Obviously, Tua is going to start from the pocket first and then kind of get the ball out to his speedy weapons. Jalen is a dual threat guy. He can throw the football down the field and also run it. So it was an interesting game as the Eagles kind of took care of business. I was surprised at the end how they pulled away from them. The Eagles went 31-17. Jalen Hurts was 23 of 31, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have another interception to continue his bad turnover ways that he's kind of had this season. The Eagles as a team are now -3 in turnovers, but they seem to keep moving on from that. He was sacked 3 times. He did have another rushing touchdown. And then, of course, we can't talk about the Eagles without talking about that brotherly shove where they did it 4 times and they were able to convert it each time.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth with Eagles fans since Sunday night. I was trying to stir the pot a little bit because all I heard was, "Oh, Miami hasn't played anybody. They're coming up against a great team in Philly. The record of their opponents and whatnot." Okay, okay. Now, congratulations, Philadelphia Eagles and their fans. You finally beat somebody. You know what I mean?
Oh, come on.
Then I had to bring up the fact that, look, their opponents' combined record are 21-25. Okay? So did they beat a good team? Absolutely. But this is what really aggravated me, LV, is all week long they talked about the schedule that the Dolphins had. But when I brought up the schedule, well, we can only play who's on our schedule. Well, what's the difference? And then they come back at me with, well, at least we beat a Super Bowl caliber team. And I'm like, oh my God. Here
Well,
we go.
it's crazy. You can only play who you put in front of them. But we know last year when they had that big run, they were playing some bad teams and bad quarterbacks. So, this was their opportunity, both these teams, to kind of step forward and say, okay, we played a quality opponent. When you look at Miami, they've beaten the Chargers. They're 2-5. They beat New England 2-5. They beat Denver. They're 2-5. They lost to Buffalo. They beat the Giants 2-5, and then they beat Carolina 0-6. So
Right.
if you're comparing opponents and records, okay, yeah, the Dolphins probably have had an easier trek. But when I look at both these teams, I look at two rosters that are coming together. You have talent at all levels of offense and defense, and it was a good battle throughout. I thought the Eagles, when they jumped to a 17-3 lead, you said, okay, this game is probably going to, it could be a blowout. But to Miami's credit, they got the pick six by Baker, and that kind of turned the game around. They jumped back in it. Tyreek Hill is just amazing. I think he really has a chance for that 2,000 yards. He had 11 catches, 88 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. He has 902 yards through 7 games, which is the second most in NFL history to Charlie Hannigan in 1961. So, we're talking a long time ago in terms of the numbers that have been put up here. And, when I look at Miami, though, it was the Eagles' defensive line once again that turned the tide in this game. Jalen Carter, the young game record, he had only 1 tackle in the game, but he beat up physically Isaiah Wynn. He hurt his quad. And then once he was out of the game, the Eagles were able to initiate the dominance on the defensive line, getting guys like Sweat going and the other Smith, the other young linebacker they drafted from Georgia. And it just showed you how the Eagles can hurt you a variety of ways on defense. So, good quality win for them, but they can't sit on their laurels because the middle part of their schedule, I'll go over in a minute, the Eagles have some tough games coming up.
Yeah, on the flip side with the Dolphins, I mean, you can't run the ball 12 times for 45 yards and expect to win a football game. It's just, you're going to become one-dimensional. The Eagles are knowing what they're going to do. They're going to pass the football because they can't run it. So I thought Miami should have rushed it a little bit more. I thought if they got within the 20 to 25, rushing range, that they'd really be able to hang. But, you can't run at 12 for 45. And then the Eagles, yeah, they only had 99 yards rushing, but they rushed it for 34 times. And they threw it for 31 times. So there's that balance we always talk
Sure.
about in the NFL. And again, if you have a solid defense that could shut down the run game, of course, Tua trying to make things happen. And yes, Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. But, again, we talk about it, LV, we've talked about it before, is the quarterbacks get all the love, and it's a receiving kind and it's a passing kind of NFL now, but you cannot put a premium on rushing in the NFL right now because week in and week out, if you rush the ball consistently and you get up in that 30 to 34, rushes a game and you balance it out with the passing attack, you are going to more than likely not win the football game.
Yeah, I mean, if you have that balance and you're able to run that football, cut it down on your turnovers, typically you will win. Now, the Eagles, the last couple of weeks against the Jets, they lost a turnover battle, and they lost it again this week where with Hurts having he had an interception as well as a fumble, and they're going to need to clean that up. So the turnover battles are key, and they seem to kind of be okay getting past that, Swift had 15 rushes for 62 yards, as you said. The line of scrimmage, they kind of controlled it up front in terms of Kelsey and the guys up front there, and they had Lane Johnson back from the ankle injury. He gave it a go, even though he was kind of beat up in this game and had some problems with Phillips around the edge a couple times, but he did just enough for the Eagles to kind of have that time of possession that we also talk about. They had 36 minutes of time of possession. And one of the crazy things, Ryan, was I think the refs may have wanted the Eagles to win. There were 10 penalties, accepted penalties against the Dolphins and 0 against the Eagles. So, was there some good home cooking going on there? I believe yes. So good quality win for them. The thing is that, as I said, the Eagles have some tough games coming up. They have Washington this week, which they beat them earlier. That's going to be interesting from there. Then they have Dallas. Then they have their bye. Then they're at Kansas City. They have Buffalo, San Francisco, who we'll get to, at Dallas again, at Seattle, who has a winning record as well. The Giants, who always seem to play them tough. Arizona should be kind of a layup game. And then they finish with the Giants. So I still think this Eagles team will win probably 12 or more games. But this was a prove-it game. They showed that they could get it done, but we'll see as they move forward going into the playoff type situation to end of the season if they can stay healthy and if they can continue dominating the line of scrimmage. And interesting thing was Howie Roseman the other day, he got it done again. He sends Edmonds and two 2024 late round picks over to Tennessee, who he also always seems to fleece Tennessee. You think they would know if Harry Roseman's calling you, don't pick the phone up. But he gets Kevin Byard, who's a 2-time former Pro Bowler, very good free safety. I've talked all along about how up the middle this team has had a lot of problems stopping passing. And Byard, after a couple weeks getting ready, he should help this team out.
Yeah, and they just picked up in the last hour and a half, the linebacker from Tennessee too, and his name is.
Man, like I said, it should pick that phone up, man. It's interesting now. Tennessee has Rand Carthen, who's their general manager, and I always said, John Robinson, he must add some pictures on him, but Rand Carthen's, I guess, trying to follow in the footsteps of Robinson in terms of this Tennessee roster, and the Eagles usually do well getting players from Tennessee. I think if we're talking about collapsing for Caleb, I think Tennessee may be starting to say, okay, we got a total tear down and rebuild going into next season because you have Tannehill, who's hurt with that ankle injury. They're not sure he's coming back. And Derrick Henry, they're both on the last year of their contracts, and they'll probably move on from them. And they're going to probably use all these picks and Rand Carthon to kind of rebuild that roster.
Will Compton was the linebacker from Tennessee that they picked up. So, Eagles again going all in this year, and by all accounts, we're going to have another collision course possibly between Kansas City and Philadelphia. So, we'll see how it transpires.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go through it again.
It's crazy, Ryan, because after all, we're almost to week 8, and we're right back where we ended the season last season with the two best teams, and we'll segue over to this game. The Kansas City Chiefs are now 6-1. And they lost opening night to the Detroit Lions, and they put that behind them, and they just keep moving forward. And you're starting to see this team starting to get some cohesiveness in terms of Mahomes and the receivers. Yes, he's spreading the football around, but you're seeing Rice. He's hitting the touchdown over and over again, and you're seeing Pacheco. Yeah, you'd like to see him rush the ball more. He had only 13 rushes for 32 yards, but Pacheco's getting his touches. And most importantly, Mr. Swift, we'll call him, Travis Kelsey, and I wonder if you heard this before. Greg Olson must have said about 80 times during all the game that I watched with him during the telecast. Oh, it's National Tight Ends Day, everybody. That's some sounds like some made up holiday to me. And to celebrate, Travis Kelsey had 12 catches on 13 targets for 179 yards and one touchdown. And he is just Mahomes' security blanket. Mahomes goes over 400 yards in the game, four touchdowns. He did have one interception, but he's looking like he's jumping back in the MVP race again. And this team is hitting on all cylinders. Yes, they lost Bolton to a wrist surgery, but even defensively, McDuffie, and the rest of the defense is really coming along. So, what did you think of the Chargers and their win over the the Kansas City Chiefs in their win over the LA Chargers, who kind of are reeling? And Brandon Staley, we talk about coaches on a hot seat. He's firmly on one of the hottest seats in the National Football League.
Yeah, when you can't stop the passing game, you know, why get away from it? Mahomes, 32 of 42, 424 yards, four touchdowns, one interception. He was only sacked once, so the offensive line stood up. Now, they only rushed it 21 times for 68 yards, but, I mean, they really didn't have to because Chargers couldn't stop the passing game. So, and they couldn't stop Kelsey, and Rashee Rice is turning into – now, he's not going to be Tyreek Hill, but he is turning into, I would say, 1B-ish kind of receiver as a compliment to Kelsey. And, again, if they can get the other guys involved, Rice had 5 catches for 60 yards. Valdez Scantling, three catches for 84 yards. Where the hell has he been all year? So, and you talk about the flip side of it, the Chargers. I said pre-weekend that if he lost this game, that I thought he would get fired, like at some point. We'll wait and see. Maybe they're going to give him a little bit more time. Maybe they wait till hey, Thanksgiving, thanks, but see you later. But again, the Chargers 2-4, underachieving. It's not like they stink, LV. It's not like they don't have a lot of talent on this team, because they do. They're like the San Diego Padres. They just have all this talent, all this stuff going on, but they can never come together and gel. And you talked about Nick Bolton for Kansas City, huge loss. They'll have to try and replace him. I think before the trade deadline, I think Kansas City will be on the phone trying to, find linebackers sort of in his league, to replace him until he comes back. But again, like the way Kansas City's going, they seem like they're putting it together now. Again, a little bit wary from the standpoint of, I was talking about the Eagles and Dolphins schedule. They really haven't had that, signature aha moment win where you're like, okay, now this team, I really believe in them.
Yeah, and they're interesting because now they lead the AFC West by 4 games. They're just dominating this division. They're running away with it. So we know they're going to have to find different ways to motivate themselves. And Andy Reid has always done a great job in terms of just keeping his team on track and keeping them moving forward. Their bye week is in week 10, so that's probably going to come at a good time to kind of get healthy. This week they play Denver, and we know, I think Mahomes is like 19-3 versus the AFC West, so he just dominates them. And Denver, I think he's only lost one time to him his whole career, and so it's at Denver. They have Miami, which should be a very interesting game. That one's going to be over in Germany. Then they have their bye. Then they have Philadelphia, and then they finish with at the Raiders, at Green Bay, Buffalo, at New England, the Raiders again, in Cincinnati, and then end with the Chargers. And so,
Right.
it's a good schedule. I still think, much like the Eagles, I think this is a 12, 13 win team or more, and they kind of relax down the stretch and just get ready for the playoffs. They do want that home field advantage, and everybody has to always remember, though, there's only one bye anymore, and you have to be the number 1 seed to get that.
Right.
They're looking like they're strongly in that position because the Bills are kind of fallen by the wayside, and they're at 4-3, and they have their own struggles. We'll go over them in a minute.
Yeah.
And then looking at the Chargers, I do agree with you that Staley needs to get wins. He needs to get them sooner. His team just cannot complete games. This is an interesting one too because Kellen Moore is on his staff. They brought him in as offensive coordinator. He may be the coach in waiting, and they've always said they need somebody in there that can help Herbert in his progression because right now he's kind of regressed and they better win this week because they're on Sunday Night Football and they host the Chicago Bears, who we talked about a little bit before. The Bears are the Bears, and they're kind of falling by the wayside.
Right.
In terms of, we talked about, we'll jump to the Bills. This was incredible. We talked about Belichick. We talked about how Robert Kraft should probably start looking to turn the page and how much goodwill does 6 Super Bowl rings buy it? Well, Bill Belichick and his team still had a little bit of fight in them. They were at home and they had the Bills coming in and Josh Allen. They got an ugly victory the week before, but they just couldn't do it this time. And the Patriots beat them 29-25. It was a back and forth game where Josh Allen was 27 of 41, 265 yards, had 2 TDs. He did have one interception where he always has a couple throws where you're like, what are you doing? And he did have a rushing touchdown. One of the big plays, though, was he had a huge overthrow on Diggs where Diggs would have walked into the end zone. He overthrew him, and it just kind of went bad from there. Mac Jones, a guy who I've killed, he played pretty well in this game. He's 25 of 30, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He hit the big game winner to Mike Gesicki on tight end day, and Bill Belichick gets his 300th win, and they were able to beat the Bills. The Bills have a pretty good defense. They lead the NFL in terms of sacks, but the Patriots snap a 3-game losing streak.
I'll say this, LV. I can't take the Bills seriously anymore. They had the loss against the Jags. Feel like they had it turned around, and then you can't lose to your division rival like that. On the road, defense travels well. It's just when you think you have the NFL figured out a little bit, you have no clue. So, and I just cannot take this team seriously. Do I think James Cook is a decent running back? Yes. I mean, they ran the ball 24 times for 81 yards. But they don't have that. Dalvin Cook is gone. So I mean, who left? Singletary's gone. Singletary was sort of the bell cow, and I thought in the offseason, LV, that they didn't address that position like they should have.
Yeah.
They should have brought somebody in. Is James Cook serviceable? Yes. Is he a bell cow? No. And you can't expect Josh Allen to run around like an idiot either, because he's going to get himself killed. So, again, the Bills, they relied way too much on the passing game with Diggs. Their tight ends are serviceable, I guess, but I just when you think the Bills may be beyond to something, they may have turned a corner, they pull stuff off like this. So I cannot now, after the 7th week, look at the Bills and say, yeah, they are going to make a deep run.
Yeah, and in this situation where Sean McDermott's been there a number of years now, and you're starting to wonder, is the message waning? He brought his GM in, Brandon Beane. They built this team up in their image of toughness that they wanted to. But as you said, Ryan, they never really addressed the running game. Why not try to bring, James Cook's brother is out. Dalvin Cook, he signs with the Jets. He seems like kind of a spare part there. Maybe they can bring him in. Even Ezekiel Elliott, who ran pretty tough against this Bills team and scored a touchdown in the red zone against them. Bring somebody like that in, because when you look at this Bills team, they are built all around the pass. They just lost Dawson Knox, their tight end. He also got hurt this week, so that's going to be a big loss for them. Defensively, yes, they're going to get Vaughn Miller back, and that's a big thing. They got Micah Hyde back. He was able to be back out there. but there is just something amiss with this Bills team in terms of can they stop other teams? And a big thing, you got to tip your cap to the Patriots. Belichick had his game plan and his team executed it. They don't have any name brand guys on offense really, and it's just a variety of guys like Stevenson and we talk about Ezekiel Elliott, Mike Gesicki. They're just spreading the football around. They're just trying to get his help as much as they can, and we'll see how the Patriots go. They have a big game. They're going to Miami, and
Right.
that's more interesting than you think because Belichick can design a defense to give Tua some problems.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the Bills, they were 5 of 12 on third down. And
Yeah,
when you can't run the football, LV, and teams know what you're going to do, if it's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 8, they're not going to run the ball. What do you think they're going to do? Even if it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2, and you can't run the football, and they make you one dimensional. You've covered the NFL for a long time.
sure.
When they don't respect one part of your offensive game, and that's the Bills' running game, they're going to focus on what you do, and
Yeah,
that's pass the football. So
yeah, and he's going to drop people in coverage, and they're going to make sure they cover up the holes. And when I look at this Bills team, yeah, they have Kincaid who came in through the draft. He's a pretty good tight end. He had some good catches this week. But Gabe Davis is more of a field stretcher. He's not a guy that's going to have more than probably 4 catches a game. And then you're right, on third down, fourth down, any critical red zone situation, they are going to be looking to get the ball in Diggs' hands, and he's always begging for it anyway. And Josh Allen's either going to force it in there or he may take off running, as you're saying, where he's trying to run over a linebacker, and he has always the potential of getting hurt. So, this was not a good look for the Bills. We'll see if they're able to bounce back. As I said, they have a quick turnaround here. They are playing Tampa Bay on Thursday night in Buffalo. We'll see how that turns out. Tampa Bay had their own struggles. This was an interesting game, kind of a boring watch for a lot of it. It was the Falcons, who are now 4-3 and lead the NFC South, over the Bucks, who are now 3-3. It was 13. It was 16-13 win for the Falcons, where they went on a Young Wei Koo 51-yard at the buzzer. It was a good win for them, but Desmond Ritter, he scares you when you're watching. And you talk about these guys coming from college. Desmond Ritter, they were bragging he didn't lose a game at home in college or in the pros. He puts the ball in harm's way a lot. He had 2 very bad fumbles, one right at the goal line where he fumbles it out of the end zone, and it gave the Bucks new life. But they're able to string together victory in Atlanta, quietly going about their business. They have a lot of weapons on that team. It was unfortunate Bijan Robinson had that illness that they didn't report, but this team, the Falcons, they're going to turn some heads, and Arthur Smith's doing surprisingly a pretty good job with them.
yeah, I mean, it sort of turned into a turnover fest there for a little bit because the
Yes.
Falcons turned it over 3 times, Buccaneers turned it over twice. Desmond Ritter, no interceptions, but he had that idiotic move where he got lackadaisical, and I thought maybe the Buccaneers would pull it out, but when I look at the Falcons, they rushed it 38 times for 156 yards, and when you have that kind of ball control, um, it was an ugly game, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay, you can't ask Baker to throw the ball 42 times and win the football game. They only rushed it 20 times for 73 yards. Atlanta, you could see what Atlanta's focus was. It was to not let them run the football, force Baker to beat us. Don't turn the ball over. I know, I said Desmond Ritter was going to have a breakout this year, and for a while it was looking good. Now he seems to be doing, and again, he drops back, and you get a little bit nervous because if
Yeah.
he just takes care of the football, the Falcons will be fine. But again, you run the ball 38 times for 156 yards. Um, you should win the football game. It'd be interesting to see where Atlanta goes from here because I don't think a lot of people had Atlanta winning the South. I personally had the Saints winning the South, But the way the Saints look offensively, again, Falcons do. They play tough defense. They run the football, and if Desmond Ritter can just play within himself, it'll be interesting to see where this Falcons team goes.
Yeah, definitely. And they're a team. Their defense has come along too with Jesse Bates at 30. He's a hard hitter in that secondary, and he's the new leader of that defense. They're doing a nice job. They also have Calais Campbell, who's the venerable veteran that's been around for a very long time. He's doing a nice job anchoring that defensive line. So they still have some pieces there in Atlanta. And as you said, it's all about Desmond Ritter. It's, because we've always talked about, okay, should they try to play into for next season and get one of these young quarterbacks that's tearing it up in college football. But Ritter's kind of saying, okay, I still have I'm still here. 19 to 25, 250 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But as we said, he's got to cut down on the fumbles. He's got to take care of that football. If they're smart, they will lean on that running game. They did get Cordero Patterson involved rushing the football. They have Algier. And then they have Bijan Robinson, who did not play much in this game. So we'll see how the Falcons go from here. Another game I wanted to touch on was last evening. Now, this was an interesting one. We said this team is buried and they were done. O'Connell was another coach on a hot seat. And the Vikings, they're now 3-4, and they look like they could possibly, remember, there's 7 spots each year now in the playoffs. So maybe they could get one of those 2 last spots. They beat the Niners in surprising fashion on Monday Night Football, 22-17.
Yeah, a little bit of surprise. I mean, I know McCaffrey's a little banged up, but they turned the ball over 3 times. Purdy had the 2 interceptions. And again, it's the Vikings were my pick to win the NFC North. With they're only 2 games out of first now with the Lions losing. So, but again, looking at the stats, Purdy was 21 of 30, 272, a touchdown, but the 2 picks, which were costly. McCaffrey, I think, had a fumble. But Chris McCaffrey, 15 carries, 45 yards. He did have the touchdown. He had the 3 catches for 51 yards and a touchdown. But collectively as a team, they ran the ball 22 times for 65 yards. That's, again, that's just not going to cut it. And you'll hear me continue to harp and beat the dead horse about the running game because, again, you get deeper into the season, LV, you know this. And when you get to the playoffs and the weather changes, if you cannot run the football consistently, you are not going to go very far or deep. Does everybody have stinkers running the football during the regular season just because they have their number that day? Yes. But to get away from it, it doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing is, we talk about, like I was talking about Baker and Desmond Ritter, Brock Purdy, you can't turn the football over. With that kind of defense that you have, if you just take care of the football and with the kind of defense that you have, you should be able to win a lot of games. But again, turnovers kill.
Yeah, and Bynum had his number. Bynum had 2 picks of Brock Purdy, and you do start to see cracks in his armor in terms of everybody talking about, well, he was the last player taken in the draft, but he's overcome this, and he's the next, Kurt Warner, a guy who comes out of nowhere. We got to wait and see. What he is, he's a good, efficient young quarterback. He does not have that bazooka of an arm. He throws a lot of anticipation. He's on the same page with his guys, but when things are off schedule, that's where it's like, okay, can he make a play? Chicken salad out of what, and
Yep.
and we saw that at the end of the game where he was trying to drive his team down the field. They're only down 5 points, and when he threw that pass, Bynum was able to jump in there, and windows are small in the National Football League, and that's probably why he was drafted in the 7th round as Mr. Irrelevant, because it's tough hitting those small windows and throwing with anticipation every time. Shanahan obviously has done a very nice job in terms of him spreading the football around and working with his weapons. I thought Ayuk was pretty good in this game. He did have a couple key drops in key situations, but we know Christian McCaffrey is the engine that makes this team go. And he only had 15 rushes for 45 yards. Yeah, he did have that 1 touchdown run, but you could still see the oblique was kind of bothering him in this effort.
Yeah, and on the flip side of it with Minnesota, I mean, Jordan Addison stepping in for Justin Jefferson. He went
Huge.
off. 7 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hawkinson had 11 catches, 86 yards. Um, and again, they ran the ball, I guess, just enough. They ran the ball 21 times collectively for 74 yards, which, again, Cousins put the ball at 45 times. But again, it's the NFL passing league. If you're having success passing the football and they can't stop it, they're going to keep doing it until you prove you can stop it. But, Cam Akers, 10 touches for 31 yards.
And I
Madison, change of
and I,
pace.
and I think Cam Akers, to be honest with you, is going to be more involved in their offense because
Yeah, he will.
O'Connell's got to get him in there, and he seems to be. Madison is a number two, possibly a number three back. And he always lived all those years living behind Dalvin Cook, and he stepped in when Cook was injured. But Madison's just not a game breaker. His hands aren't that good, and he's also not that great about picking up the blitzes. But I think the Vikings will stay the course. And the key game, Brian's obviously week 16 and week 18. They're playing Detroit in those 2 weeks, so they get them late. And we'll see if the Vikings can hang around and get one of those last spots. I know they're hoping to get Justin Jefferson back. He has that hamstring injury. He probably has about 2 or 3 more weeks before they open a window up and he can be back on the roster. But the Vikings, and I got to tip my cap to Kirk Cousins, a guy who I've killed a lot over the years, particularly in primetime matchups. He was 35 of 45, 378 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have another interception, but he was fitting the ball into those tight windows that we're talking about, driving the football down the field without fear. So good win for the Vikings and Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the guy they're playing Green Bay twice. You're right. The Detroit, Green Bay, then Detroit, the end of the year. They play the Vegas Raiders, who are a mess right now. Chicago with my man from Shepherd University. That's where they make shepherd's pie, Badgett, whatever his name is.
Tyson
Denver,
Badgett.
yeah, they have to play Denver. That could be a potential win. New Orleans, the way they're playing, a potential win. So, yes, they started off poorly. They're 3-4. But I say if they can go like 7-3 the rest of the way and finish 10-7, depending on what happens with Detroit, they might still win this division.
Yeah, and Brian Flores has this defense playing very well, and particularly Jordan Hicks, a guy who I covered here with the Eagles, who was kind of nondescript, and the Eagles stepped away from him. He's playing very well for the Vikings at this point. So we'll see if the Vikings get in the mix. I definitely want to touch on a team that they're chasing. This was a big game, and it's a guy you actually. You killed him. You told me, you said, Lloyd, he'll never win. He's not championship level quarterback. Well, Lamar Jackson has jumped back into the MVP race. He played extremely well in this game. He was 21 of 27, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did have one rushing touchdown, and then he didn't allow any sacks in this game. So big win for the Baltimore Ravens as Detroit came to Baltimore and they got their butts beat 38-6, and it was a big win for the Ravens. And they had 503 total yards, and it just shows you the Ravens may be the cream of the AFC North.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lions thought it was Halloween early, and they dressed up as imposters in this game. I mean, I didn't see a 38-6 beatdown. I mean, I really
Wow.
didn't. I thought the Lions would come to play. It's the Ravens that came to play. But again, just taking a look at this, Jared Goff threw the ball 53 times. 53, no touchdowns. He had to pick, but he threw the damn ball 53 times. They only ran it 14 times for 84 yards. Yes, Jameer Gibbs had a decent day. I get it. St. Brown's going to do his thing. Jameer Gibbs did have 9 catches for 58 yards. But, again, you can't expect your quarterback to throw the ball 53 times and win the damn football game.
Yeah, and there was I know there were stats out there when a quarterback throws it 50 times or more. I think they win about 25% of the time when you're throwing the ball that many times. And let's not forget it's Jared Goff, and yeah, he's a solid, not spectacular quarterback, but you don't want him throwing that ball that many times. I probably say you want him throwing it 35 times or less. Amon St. Brown, they let him eat. He got his catches, but everyone else they pretty much shut down. Laporta did have some catches, but the key thing to this Baltimore Ravens team is that new defense under defensive coordinator McDonald. He's doing a great job. They had 5 sacks in this game. I talked about the interception of Golf. This defense is coming along, and they're just getting more dangerous each week, and it allows to take the pressure off their offense to a point. Hardball. He'll take field goals because he knows that defense will shut people down. Tucker is finally starting to turn a corner after a slow start in terms of making his kicks. And Lamar Jackson, as I said, he did a great job taking care of the football. He was a passing threat in this game. There were a couple of times where he kind of okey doked him. He kind of looked like he was going to run, then he popped back and threw the football to guys like Odell Beckham Jr., who had 5 catches on 7 targets for 49 yards. And this Ravens team is just stacking W's, and we'll see how they do. Obviously, like we always talk about when we talk to Ravens, it's prove it time in the playoffs. Unfortunately, that's the barometer for them at this point, and we'll see how they go from there. The Ravens are at Arizona this week, a very winnable game, and they should probably get that done. Detroit's going to be interesting. They have the Raiders. Who are coming in on Monday Night Football in a game they cannot have a letdown. They need to get a win there.
Yeah, when you talk about the Ravens again, I have to apologize to Baltimore fans because I through the first 7 weeks, I did not see them being 5-2, but I digress. But when you have the kind of they passed the ball 27 times, they ran it for 27 times. That's balance, my friends. That keeps them off kilter. And when Lamar Jackson doesn't turn the ball over and doesn't try to do too much, he is effective. But again, 27 times for 146 yards rushing, that'll get it done. The Lions, they're probably going to start hearing a little bit of noise now. If they lose to the Raiders, then I hate to hear what Detroit radio sounds like. But again, like you said, they can't afford to let down. You've got to be able to go on the road and win. You're still 5-2, but you're starting to maybe
Right.
see little chinks in the armor a little bit.
Yeah. And, Dan Campbell, I know, is going to preach staying the course and biting off the kneecaps, and we'll see if the Lions are able to turn around. They did have a couple key injuries that they're trying to work through, particularly Montgomery at the running back spot.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can get him back. Now, the team they're going to play, you can't talk about what I'm calling upset Sunday without talking about this game. This was incredible because you kind of mentioned it earlier. You had Tyson Bagent coming from Shepherd University, a Division II team, an undrafted free agent, and it was the battle of the backup quarterbacks. He came in and got it done for the Bears. The Bears, they're not collapsing for Caleb. They still have some fight in them. And on the other side, when I talked about giving out my lackey this week, there was no other choice but to give it to Brian Hoyer. I mean, he is just pitiful. I think I could play quarterback better than him in the National Football League. I don't even know how he started this game. He was pulled for Aiden O'Connell in the third quarter or so. Hoyer was 17 of 32, 129 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in this game. He has not won a start since 2016, and he's lost 13 straight starts since then. So McDaniels, if McDaniels wants to keep his job and all that with Mark Davis, he can't put Brian Hoyer out there. And it was a good quality win for the Bears. Jalen Johnson had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. And then Dante Foreman was incredible. He ran the ball hard in this game. He had 2 touchdowns. So good win for the Bears. They're not quitting just yet.
And I was unaware that Tyler Bagent won the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy.
Harlan Hill Award. Yes,
the
sir.
Harlan Hill Award. Yes, I was unaware of that. So I apologize to Bears fans and Tyler Bagent because I was making fun of him a little bit a couple of weeks ago. I said the only way he's going to get to play is if Justin Fields gets hurt. Unfortunately, Justin Fields got hurt. This doesn't bode well for Justin Fields, by the way. So, um, but the thing that stood out to me most in this game, and again, I'm going to beat the dead horse. LV, the Bears ran it 38 times for 173 yards. That took all the pressure off of Badgett. Just don't turn the ball over. Run the football. We'll play solid defense, and we're probably going to win the football game. But the Raiders, my God, my goodness, it was a stinker, a stinker, a stinker. And I'm going to tell you something. With everything that's going on in Michigan right now, the rumblings will start. Maybe Harbaugh to the Raiders, maybe Harbaugh to the Chargers. So you're right. Josh McDaniels, fantastic offensive mind. He's a great offensive coach. Is he a head coach? He's proven it his second time around that it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, and you have Devontae Adams, who you can see him just getting more frustrated each week as he's not getting his targets. As we talked about earlier, when a team knows where the ball's going, they're going to double and bracket that receiver, and there's just not much else that he can do out there. Yes, they have Max Crosby on defense and a couple pieces here and there, but the Raiders roster is kind of devoid, and they have a lot of work to do in terms of rebuilding that team. I thought Foreman did a great job stepping in for the Bears. That's going to be interesting as they get Johnson back from the concussion protocol. If they're going to stick with Dante Foreman, a guy who's moved around the National Football League, he's been on a number of teams, but he runs the ball hard and effectively. 16 rushes, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then Badgett, as we talked about, efficient, 21 of 29, 162 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and he had 24 rushing yards. So, I didn't like the way he was wearing his hat at the end of the game, kind of turned to the side. You're not a rapper, okay? Come on, you're a quarterback. But I thought he did a great job, and we'll see how he does. Uh, Chicago is at the Chargers in a loser leaves town match on Sunday Night Football. Kind of a bad matchup for a national audience, but we'll see if the Chargers can right the ship against them. And then the Raiders, as we said, are at Detroit on Monday Night Football. Another game we'll get to before we start previewing the games next week. You got to talk about this one. Jacksonville, who's now 5-2, on Thursday night, they did just enough to beat the Saints, who are now 3-4. It was a 31-24 win. And as you said in this one, the story of the game has to be Derek Carr. He continues to check the football down. I don't know if it's a shoulder or what's going on with him, but he's not driving the football down the field with authority. And then you had Trevor Lawrence in key situations take this game over, and particularly the 48-yard touchdown pass to Christian Kirk that won this game for him. And Jacksonville, another scary, dangerous team, and they are going to be heard from when it comes playoff time.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, he didn't throw any picks, so that's a good thing. He was efficient. They ran the ball 26 times for 113 yards. Etienne had it was sort of like a mirror image of one another, like the whole game long. Like neither one of them really sort of had the advantage. Again, Derek Carr threw the ball 55 times. Now they ran the ball 31 times for 112 yards. Kamara did his thing, 12 catches, 91 yards. But again, there's just something about this Saints offense that just maybe seems a little off. I don't know. It's because of Carr. You know what you're going to get with Carr. But it's almost like they expect, like, okay, we got a great defense, and if we don't do our thing, the defense will keep us in it. And they did for a while. But again, 55 times passing, 31 times rushing. That's 86 plays. Don't get me wrong. But you can't expect your quarterback, again, to throw up the ball that many times and expect to win the football game. And with Jacksonville, they've sort of like righted the ship now. And yes, they're a dangerous team. They're finally gelling. They're finally coming together. And I just think with this Jacksonville team, they know what they are. They know what their identity is. And Doug Peterson has them steering in the right direction. And the Saints are starting to like tail off a little bit now. So
Yeah, and you have Jackson, who's now on a 3-game winning streak. They won they won those big games over in London, and that kind of spurred them along. And this is a team that they have a 2 game lead right now in the AFC South. So I think the Jags are moving into that playoff mix, and you have Indy who's kind of trying to pull things together, Gardner Minshew, and they're kind of falling by the wayside. Houston obviously is one of the surprises of the season. They're coming off their
Yeah,
bye. They're 3-3, but I still think this is a Jags division to win. Um, in terms of the Saints, Moreau had a big drop late that hurt them, and you know they only seem to move the ball when Taysom Hill comes in. In those key
yeah,
situations, he's going to run it, but they just can't stop that. Offensive line, actually, the Saints have put a lot of draft packs in it over the years, and they just haven't panned out. You have John Ramirez coming from the University of Michigan. He's kind of underperformed. And then you have Ruiz, who looked like McCoy, who was pretty good as a center his first couple of years, and McCoy's kind of dropped off. So the Saints will see where they are, but I still think the Saints will probably finish that 9-8 range, an up and down type of team. Jacksonville will be at Pittsburgh this week in a very big matchup. And then you have the Saints. They continue their AFC South tour. They're going to Indianapolis. So that's going to be an interesting one to look at. You're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and a Broad Street South Network. I'm here with my partner in crime, Ryan Neff. We're going through the games and talking about all the big stories. We're going to probably preview, starting in a few minutes, we'll preview upcoming week 8, which is real crucial around the NFL, almost at that halfway point that we talked about. But before we get to the next week's games, Ryan, I can't talk about last week without talking about my game ball winner. It had to be Browns defensive end Myles Garrett, who was just incredible. He's looking like Defensive Player of the Year candidate in a 39-38 win over the Colts in this one. He had 9 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, 1 tackle for loss. He even had a pass defense, 2 forced fumbles, one of which was recovered for a touchdown. And then probably the play of the year, he jumps over the stack a la Cam Chancellor and just blocks a big field goal, just showing pure athleticism. So Myles Garrett, hat tip to him. You give him my game ball, and that was a good win for the Browns, who surprisingly are 4-2 and are tied for first place in the AFC North.
I mean, Myles Garrett's just a beast, and they needed every bit of him because as good as that defense looked against San Francisco, they did not look good against the Colts. I did not see that coming. Grant Delpit had a real good game too. It's going to be interesting to see where the Browns go. I'm a little concerned about the whole Deshaun Watson thing right
Yeah,
now.
which quarterback? That's the interesting because he hurts his shoulder, comes back, plays in this one. He gets slung around. They think he has a concussion. He's okay. He could have went back in the game, and they said Stefanski was like, you know what, go sit over there on the bench, and we'll go with PJ Walker of all guys. Walker is one of those no yes quarterbacks. It's like he can make a big play, but he can have several boo-boos during the game. And he was able to do just enough to get another win for Cleveland. And this team is going to be interesting as they keep fighting through that AFC North division that we were talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to give out a game ball. My man, Mr. Badgett from Chicago, doesn't turn the ball over. He's efficient. He had that team rocking. He had the stadium rocking. He was pumped. He had like 100 and some friends and family
Yes,
at the
he
game.
did.
I mean, there was all kinds of pressure on him. It could have gone south real quick, but the kid was composed. The pressure wasn't on him. He just performed, and the Bears came out with a victory. So, and I hate to say this, LV, because I was a Justin Fields fan, but if the kid continues to play like this, now I know they're going to say Justin Fields is our starter, but let's say the Bears reel off like 3 or 4 wins in a row. You know what I mean? And then Justin Fields.
He may get that thumb surgery that he's trying to postpone real quick.
Yeah. So my game ball goes to him. I'm going to be interested to see where he goes from here, how he performs. I hope he can keep it up because it would be a feel good story for the year.
Yeah, that's going to be real interesting. And another person we had to highlight it was as we kept hearing over and over from Greg Olson. It was you know tight end holiday or whatever they were calling it. Happy tight end day. Darren Waller, 7 catches and 89 yards and 1 touchdown in a big win for the Giants. Another team that was lost for dead. They beat Washington 14-7. So we'll give him a game ball. But we all know it was Saquon Barkley show in that game. 21 rushes, 77 yards. He had 118 total yards in the game. He did have a bad fumble late, but good win for the Giants. And we'll kind of start looking at our week 8 games as before we close out. Ryan, interesting game here. On Thursday night football, you have the Bucks, who are 3-4. They are at the Buffalo Bills, who we've talked about. They're very inconsistent, up and down team. Yes, they lead the NFL in sacks, but they're going to have to get some pressure on Baker Mayfield and have him make some mistakes. Um, Two teams, as we talked about earlier, that don't run the football well, but somebody's got to make a big play. It'll probably be Antoine Winfield Jr. in this one, but I somehow think Josh Allen will will his team to victory here. But what do you say about this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in agreement with you. I mean, if the Bills lose this game and they go 4-4, there's going to be all kinds of rumblings. Diggs might want out. You know, who knows? Tampa Bay, I know they started off strong, but I don't trust Baker Mayfield. They can't run the football. Buffalo at home, Thursday night. I know it's a short week. I just think Buffalo finds a way to win maybe in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Now, this next game is an interesting one, and it's a dangerous one for the Philadelphia Eagles. We see the Eagles a lot of times they'll have a big win, and then they'll have a game where they kind of look past their next opponent, and they got the Dallas game after this one, but the Eagles are at Washington. Um, Eagles 6-1. Washington, as we know, are 3-4. Sam Howell has been sacked on a record pace. He's going to probably get sacked over 100 times this season. And that's probably a recipe for disaster against this Eagles defensive front that we talked about, who last year had 70 sacks to lead the league. Hassan Reddick is just flying around the corner like we haven't seen it. Anybody doing quite a while. And then you have Jalen Carter collapsing that pocket with the veteran Fletcher Cox. So I think the Eagles will win this one, but I think it's going to be closer than people think. The Eagles are a 6.5-point favorite. I'll say the Eagles just beat the line there. I think they get a 7-point victory. But what do you think in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Washington, the last two or three times they played the Eagles tough, obviously. They beat them last year to end the
Yeah.
streak. You have Jonathan Allen with the do-rag on and the post game, and I'm tired of this and effing this and that and the other thing. And so Ron Rivera will probably get this team up for this game, but Philly, they know what they are. They know what they do. Again, will Washington play them tough for a half? Probably. Do you trust Sam Howell? No. So, again, I think Philadelphia eventually will pull away, probably midway through the third quarter, and I see like a 10 to 13 point victory.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you there. Now, Baltimore 5-2 is at Arizona. This is probably one we'll just touch on real quick. I had Josh Dobbs. He's played better than a lot of people think in terms of stepping in there for Kyler Murray. They did open the practice window for Murray. He's trying to get back from that ACL injury last December, January timeframe. We'll see if he's able to get into this one. But I think Baltimore goes into Arizona and wins this one going away. And finally, Odell Beckham will hit the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore can't afford a letdown here. Arizona is in sort of disarray as they normally are. Uh, it's easy win for Baltimore going on the road. Jackson will probably go off. You know they're going to pound the rock. So I see an easy win for Baltimore in this one.
Yeah, and this next game is going to be interesting because you have two teams that lost last week, and they need to stay pace in their respective divisions. The Saints 3-4 travel to the Colts, who are also 3-4. And when I see this one, it'll probably be a low scoring game with a lot of featuring of their running backs, particularly Alvin Kamara for the Saints, and then Jonathan Taylor, who we probably should have touched on earlier. He seems to be back. He seems to be running downhill. They gave him more touches than Zach Moss this past week, and he's running with authority. But this is tough. I've been back and forth in this one. The line probably says it's a pick 'em or so, but somehow I think Gardner Minshew will pull some magic out of his hat, and Jonathan Taylor will run the football down the field. And the Saints, as we talked about, who are kind of reeling. And then you have Chris Olave, who got in some trouble today in terms of speeding, and he was arrested. We'll see if he's going to play in this game, but I think the Colts win this one.
Yeah, you can't expect Derek Carr to throw the ball 50 times, 55 times every game. And I always say, fear the min stash. Fear the min stash. So he almost pulled out the miracle against the Browns, but New Orleans going in there, New Orleans is reeling a little bit. Whoever runs the ball more effectively, I think, wins the football game. I just think that Indianapolis has the better running game, the better offensive line. I'll go for an Indianapolis win, but narrowly.
All right, we got more minutes and look at a couple. Kansas City 6-1 is at the Denver Broncos. Obviously, I think I want to see how high this line is. That'll be the key thing on this one. Will the line get up to over 14 points? But whatever the line is, I think the Chiefs will cover it, and I think Russell Wilson's going to make some mistakes, and it's going to be a high scoring affair where you see the Chiefs put up some stats, and they'll probably show Taylor Swift at least. I'll go to over under her 5 times on screen as Kelsey dominates. So I think the Chiefs have a big win in Mile High in this one.
You know what? This game scares me for some odd reason. I don't know
Ooh.
why. They just Denver coming off a home win against Green Bay. I called that, by the way. I called Denver beating Green Bay. Two teams that hate one another, divisional rivals. I think Denver puts up a fight for like a long time in this game. But I think Kansas City in the fourth quarter, Mahomes will find a way. Russell will probably do something out of the norm like he always does. So I think Kansas City wins LV, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think.
Wow. So they'll probably beat that line, which will probably be, I think, about 14 points. So Ryan is saying take the points in the Broncos in this one. So we'll write it down in pencil. All right. A big one is this is a Super Bowl rematch from a long time ago. I remember that game, but since it's Cincinnati's 3-3 and they're at the Niners. This is another tough one to pick because you have Jamar Chase coming back after a bye, and you have Joe Burrow. They've reeled off some wins here, and they seem to be getting hot. You have the Niners who've lost their last 2 games, and they had some bad. We'll see if Fred Warner's playing this one, and Dre Greenlaw. He was beat up in the game as well. So we'll see which Niners are going to be out in this one, but I'm going to say that Cincinnati continues the free fall of the Niners, and they go into Levi Stadium and they beat Purdy, who's kind of showing that he's good, not great quarterback. But I think Joe Burrow and Cincinnati wins this one.
Yeah, I mean, does Debo Samuel come back?
Yeah, I'm hearing he's probably not going to
Yeah.
play in this game.
So it's something's off with San Francisco. I mean, ever since they lost to the Browns, which they could have won it on the last second field goal, just something seems to be maybe a little off with them.
Yeah,
Cincinnati coming off a bye will be rested. Sometimes when you have a bye, you got to like shake off some of the rust. But I said a couple weeks ago, if Cincinnati gets a couple wins, they might go on a roll. So I think Cincinnati goes in there. I think it's close to the fourth quarter, but I think Cincinnati pulls it out with a late field goal.
interesting. Um, the last game we'll talk about is the battle for MetLife Stadium, the battle for New Jersey. You know, these two teams during the preseason they got together and they were pushing and shoving, and you were wishing Aaron Rodgers would play in this game, but you got the Jets 3-3, and they're at technically a home game for the Giants. They're 3-4. So in this one, I think Zach Wilson is going to lean a lot on Brees Hall. You know, I think Hall breaks out. He has a big game. That Giants defense has had trouble stopping the run, and if you can block Williams, you're able to move the football down the field, and so that'll set up the play action for Zach Wilson to throw it to Garrett Wilson. So I think the Jets win this one in MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here. Jets defense solid, better than the Giants. I think again, the Jets know what they are now. Just don't turn the ball over, Zach. We're going to pound the rock, mix in a little bit of pass. I just think on both sides of the ball, the Jets are better. Obviously, this is going to be a slugfest, but I just see the Jets wearing down that Giants defense. That offensive line is going to lean on them, and I got the Jets winning by a touchdown.
Oh, interesting. And we'll see if they're saying Aaron Rodgers is trying to get back. You know, maybe he's spraying some deer antler stuff on his ankle. I heard somebody did that in the past, so we'll see. But you know, you were listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. Thanks for Ryan F. for joining us this week, helping us out, review the games, and we'll see how it goes against our predictions. Again, thanks to our producer, Angel, doing a great job behind the ones and twos. Enjoy the games, everybody, and we will catch you next week on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football.